7 days in New Zealand is not enough to see New Zealand. This needs to be said clearly before anything else, because pretending otherwise would contradict everything already established about a country where 2 weeks is the honest minimum for the South Island alone. 7 days is enough to see one part of New Zealand properly, and one part, done without rushing, is worth immeasurably more than 2 parts done as a blur of driving and departure gates. This itinerary makes a specific and deliberate choice. The South Island, starting in Queenstown and moving north through the Mackenzie Basin to Christchurch. Not the standard direction. Most visitors who do the South Island fly into Christchurch and drive south toward Queenstown, which means they arrive at the most dramatic landscapes after days of driving, often in the wrong order for the light and the weather windows. Starting in Queenstown reverses this. You begin with the highest drama and move gradually towards something quieter and more contemplative, which is the right emotional arc for a week that needs to earn its ending. There's a second reason for the reverse direction that's purely practical. The drive from Christchurch to Queenstown takes between 5 and 6 hours on the direct route, consuming an entire day of a 7-day trip in transit. The drive from Queenstown north to Christchurch, broken over multiple days with stops in the Mackenzie Basin, takes the same total distance and turns it into the best part of the journey rather than the cost of getting somewhere. The itinerary that most people book puts the transit at the beginning. This one distributes it as content. Fly into Queenstown. This is the correct arrival for this direction. Day 1 is for landing and for the lake, and the combination is exactly right for a first day because Queenstown's setting does the work that a first day should do. It tells you immediately that you're somewhere that looks like nowhere else you've been. The Remarkables rising above Lake Wakatipu on the eastern shore, Coronet Peak to the north, the lake itself stretching 24 kilometers into the mountains in a shape that looks carved rather than formed because it was, by glaciers, over repeated ice ages. Check in, walk the lakefront, eat somewhere on the waterfront in the early evening when the light on the mountains goes pink and the reflection on the lake goes still. The first evening in Queenstown should be quiet. The next 2 days will not be. Day 2 is for Milford Sound, which requires leaving at 5:30 in the morning and returning in the early evening and constitutes the most demanding day of the week. Demanding in the best sense, the kind of demanding that reorganizes your understanding of what landscape can be. The drive from Queenstown to Milford Sound through Teanau is approximately 3 hours each way, and the last section, from Teanau into Fiordland along the Milford Road, is one of the most spectacular roads in New Zealand even before you reach the destination. The road passes through ancient beech forest, along the shores of glacial lakes, through the Homer tunnel bored through solid rock at the base of a hanging valley, and emerges on the Fiordland side into a landscape of vertical cliff and waterfall that operates at a scale your eyes need a moment to accept. The tunnel itself, 1.3 kilometers of unlined rock, is the moment the geography changes. Before it, mountains. After it, fjord country. Milford Sound receives 7 to 8 meters of rainfall annually, making it one of the wettest inhabited places on Earth. And the experience of arriving on a rainy day is different from arriving on a clear day in specific ways worth understanding before you go. On a clear day, the fjord is blue, and the peaks above are visible, and the waterfalls are thin lines of silver against gray rock. On a rainy day, the waterfalls multiply, dozens of them appearing on every surface that can hold water, which in Fiordland after rain is every surface, and the mist sits in the valley in layers, and the whole thing looks like a painting that hasn't fully decided what it wants to be. Both versions are extraordinary. Neither is the wrong version. The mistake is arriving hoping for one and coming home disappointed by having received the other. Book the cruise rather than the kayak for a first visit because the cruise covers the full length of the fjord from the head to the Tasman Sea mouth in a way that establishes the scale before you're close enough to it to lose perspective. The cliffs rise over 1,000 meters directly from the water. Mitre Peak, the iconic triangular summit that appears in every Milford photograph, is 1,692 meters tall and sits so close to the water that the ratio of height to base makes it look implausible. You sail past it at close range on the cruise, which is the only moment when the implausibility resolves into understanding. It's that tall because the fjord is that deep, and the whole landscape was carved by something that operated at a scale that makes the mountain's drama a side effect rather than a feature. Return to Queenstown in the early evening, eat something simple, sleep early. Day 3 is for the remarkables and for the slower version of Queenstown that the adventure sport infrastructure mostly obscures. The Remarkables ski area access road winds up from the valley floor to over 1,600 meters, and in summer the drive is open to anyone with a vehicle and serves as the most accessible high alpine viewpoint above Queenstown. At the top, the lake and the town below look like a model of themselves. The scale that seemed overwhelming at water level resolves into something you can hold in one view. Walk the trails above the ski area if the legs are willing. The alpine vegetation at this elevation, the tussock grasses, the small flowering plants, the specific quality of the light above the cloud layer if cloud is present, is the New Zealand that exists above the tourist infrastructure, and above the lake, operating in complete indifference to the adventure economy below. The afternoon in Queenstown is for the Arrowtown detour, 20 minutes northeast of town, a gold rush village of the 1860s that has preserved its historical character with unusual completeness. The main street is short enough to walk in 10 minutes and long enough to spend an afternoon in if you go slowly. The original buildings housing their original businesses in many cases, the Chinese settlement at the edge of town where the Chinese miners who arrived during the gold rush lived in conditions their European counterparts didn't, the Arrow River still showing color in the right light at the right time of year. Arrowtown is not on most Queenstown itineraries because it requires leaving the lake, and leaving the lake feels counterintuitive when the lake is that beautiful. Leave the lake anyway. Day 4 is the drive to the Mackenzie Basin, which is where this itinerary reveals its argument most clearly. The route from Queenstown to Lake Tekapo via Cromwell and the Lindy's Pass takes approximately 3.5 hours, and the drive through the Lindy's is one of the more specifically New Zealand landscapes on the island. Tussock-covered hills rolling in every direction, almost entirely without trees. The light in summer making the grasses look golden in a way that photographs consistently fail to capture because the color is in the movement as much as in the pigment. Stop at the Lindy's Pass summit. Stand in the tussock for 5 minutes with no particular agenda. This is the South Island's interior at its most characteristic and least visited. Lake Tekapo arrives as a surprise even when you know it's coming, because the color is not something the photographs prepare you for. Not because the photographs are bad, but because the color is genuinely unusual in a way that requires direct experience to fully register. The turquoise comes from rock flowers suspended in the glacial meltwater, fine particles ground by the glaciers from the mountain bedrock that catch and scatter the light differently from clear water. The Church of the Good Shepherd on the lakeshore, built in 1935 from local schistone, is the most photographed small building in New Zealand and earns its reputation. The east-facing window above the altar frames Mount John and the lake and the Alps beyond in a composition that whoever placed the window understood exactly. The Mackenzie Basin, the high country plateau where Tekapo sits alongside its larger neighbor Pakaki, is also home to some of the darkest skies in the southern hemisphere. The Aoraki Mackenzie International Dark Sky Reserve covers the region, and the absence of light pollution in one of the world's most sparsely populated landscapes produces night skies of the kind that most people encounter only in photographs. In winter, the Milky Way is visible from the lakeshore. In summer, the nights are shorter, but the galaxy still comes up. Eat dinner early and go back outside afterward. Day 5 moves north to Aoraki Mount Cook, the highest peak in New Zealand and Australasia at 3,724 meters, and the destination that the Mackenzie Basin has been building toward since the drive through the Lindy's Pass. The road from Tekapo to Mount Cook Village runs along the western shore of Lake Pakaki, and Lake Pakaki is the same impossible glacial turquoise as Tekapo and significantly larger, with Aoraki visible at the head of the lake when the cloud allows on a clear day. The drive along this road is the photograph most people mean when they think about New Zealand's South Island, even if they don't recognize the specific location. The aquamarine lake, the braided river delta at its southern end, the snow peaks at its northern end, the total absence of anything human in the midground. Mount Cook Village is small and exists entirely as a base for the mountain experience. A handful of accommodation options, one grocery store, the DOC Visitor Center, the starting points for the valley walks. The Hooker Valley Track is the most rewarding of the day walks. 3 hours return, crossing 3 swing bridges over the Hooker River, through a valley that gets closer to the mountain with every kilometer, ending at a glacial lake where icebergs, Genuine icebergs, calved from the Hooker Glacier, float in turquoise water with the face of Aoraki directly above. The first swing bridge, the second swing bridge, the third swing bridge, and then the lake. The walk builds deliberately towards something that you can feel arriving before you see it, and the arrival is worth everything the walk required. Stay the night in Mount Cook Village. The hotel at the village is the only option if you want to be at the trailhead at dawn, which you do, because the light on the mountain in the first hour after sunrise does something to the rock and snow that no other light replicates. Day 6 is the drive to Christchurch, and it's the day when the week's reverse direction proves itself most clearly. The route from Mount Cook to Christchurch via Lake Wakatipu and the Mackenzie Basin, and then over Burke Pass to Geraldine, is approximately 4 hours, and driving it after 5 days in the mountains produces a specific feeling: the gradual return of farmland, of small towns, of the Canterbury Plains spreading east to the Pacific. That arrival in Christchurch from the north via the direct highway never creates. You've come from something. The city receives you differently when you've been somewhere first. Christchurch is New Zealand's third largest city, and the one whose recent history shapes it most specifically. The February 2011 earthquake killed 185 people and destroyed the central city. Not damaged it, destroyed it, with entire blocks demolished, and the Anglican cathedral still in scaffolding over a decade later. The city that rebuilt around the rubble made choices that younger, less damaged cities don't get to make. The Star Container Mall that became a post-earthquake landmark, the cardboard cathedral designed by Shigeru Ban as a temporary replacement, the gap filler initiative that turned vacant lots into gardens and performance spaces, and skating rinks in the years when the permanent was still being decided. The result is a city with a visible seam where the old and the new meet, and where the seam is part of the architecture rather than something to be covered over. The Botanic Gardens, undamaged, remain the best public green space in the South Island. 33 hectares of specimen trees and rose gardens, and the Avon River running through it, and the gondola on the Port Hills giving a view of the entire Canterbury Plains to the Alps and east to the Pacific that, at the end of a week that has been full of extraordinary views, still earns its place in the sequence. Day 7 is Christchurch and the flight home. The last morning should be spent at the Christchurch Art Gallery and at one of the Sunday markets that run in regenerated areas of the central city. The South Island has a craft and food producer culture that the markets express more authentically than any retail environment. And buying something made in the South Island at a market run by the person who made it is the correct last thing to do in a place that has spent the week being specific rather than generic. 7 days in the South Island, done this way, doesn't show you the Abel Tasman or the Nelson Lakes or the glaciers of the West Coast or the Catlins in the far south or the Marlborough Sounds at the top of the island. All of those are real and worth returning for, and the correct response to not reaching them in 7 days is not to add them to this itinerary, but to plan the return trip. The South Island is large enough and various enough that every 7-day trip through it can take a completely different route and find completely different landscapes and come home with a completely different account of the same island. What this particular 7 days gives you is the emotional arc of the South Island done in the right direction. The drama of Fiordland and Queenstown at the start, the contemplative beauty of the Mackenzie Basin in the middle, and the mountain country, and the rebuilt city at the end. Each day is a different register of the same landscape, and the reverse direction is the reason they build rather than diminish. You're always moving towards something new rather than recovering from something you've already seen. Go. Come back for the North Island next time. Come back for the West Coast the time after that. New Zealand is large enough and extraordinary enough that 7 days is a beginning rather than a completion, and the only mistake is treating a beginning as if it were an ending. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, smash that like button and subscribe to When to Travel. We're all about helping you make smarter travel decisions. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you think your friends need this, share it. Comment below with your next destination or your biggest travel question. I'm reading all of them. Let's go.